REPowerEU plan, as we know, pushes for higher investment on things like liquefied natural gas, renewables, biogas, and green hydrogen, as well as energy efficiency to reduce energy use. And so there are a number of questions, right, that check with our English speakers. Are the Commission's plans realistic? What bottlenecks are there to accelerate all these investments? What's needed to overcome them in terms of policy interventions? Are we facing the end of cheap natural gas and with it the end of natural gas as a transition fuel? How can Europe avoid new dependencies while it tries to get rid of old ones when it comes to solar panels, critical materials, batteries? Today we see that because of these very immediate energy security concerns, some European governments are allowing coal power plants, for example, to come back online or increase production in spite of the emissions they entail. So this was just one of the tensions that have been emerging in the past few months, the one between energy security and environmental climate concerns, but there are others. We also see that as energy prices have reached new heights in recent months, governments have rolled out measures to insulate consumers from price increases as far as possible. But this is now starting to have an important burden on public budgets. I think the latest figures calculated by Bruegel in the past year, all these measures have summed up to €500 billion across the EU, UK, and Norway. So another element in this discussion is then the tension between energy scarcity, which translates into high prices, the political need for energy affordability, both for households and businesses, for their competitors, but merely to stay afloat, and the fiscal capacity of governments to support squeezed energy consumers. So just a few thoughts that I'm sure we'll expand on in the discussion today. We have three excellent speakers. We have Maria Rita Galli, CEO of DESFA, joining us remotely, the Hellenic Gas Transmission System Operator. Thank you, Maria Rita, welcome. We have András Hujber, Policy Officer at the European Commission's DG Energy. And we have Øyvind Vessia, Head of Energy Economics at Ørsted, a Danish power company. And before getting started, let me give the floor to the host of today's event, Stasi Francis, partner here at Clifford Chance, for some welcoming remarks.
Thank you very much, Elisabetta. I would like to say welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. I won't take much of the time. I would just like to raise three issues around challenges that the European Commission and the member states face today around the topic we're discussing. I have to admit upfront that as a lawyer, I do not have necessarily an answer to those issues I will raise, but I would just like to set out these issues. Energy is a shared competence. Every little counts, and looking forward, we should have an open mind. This is how I have conceptualized the 3 points I would like to make. So energy is a shared competence. That means that the Commission cannot impose directly in an absolute way to member states exactly what measures they can take. Member states have a discretion in their energy policies. We can see that in the way they adopt the energy mix policies in different countries. At the same time, however, today, adopting different, for example, price cap measures or different level of revenue cap measures may have an impact on how energy flows around Europe. Therefore, there is a tension there between the need for uniformity, but at the same time, different member states, they have different infrastructure, different financial capabilities and needs, and therefore they have to balance different policy considerations. That's a challenge that has a significant impact also on the timing of the measures. The Commission started discussing all these measures a year ago. They have been adopted last week, measures on electricity, for example. Second point, every little counts. This crisis shows, and the Commission and other policymakers indicate that in the context of this crisis, even little projects in different member states can have an impact on energy security. One storage project here or one production facility in a small member state can have an impact. Now, that said, I'm wondering, as a state aid control practitioner as well, whether the European Commission, in reviewing proposals of projects that need to be subsidized, should consider of relaxing a bit further the rules they apply. In particular, or at least in the way they take into account the intra-member state impact of a project and the positive impact of such projects. Sometimes the European Commission, because the project might be of a small scale, and it's really difficult to see how that would have an impact immediately on other member states, they may be negative or may be critical on the level of the subsidy or the nature of the subsidy that the member state would like to make. Now, in this crisis shows that perhaps the Commission should reconsider this. And a third and last point, looking forward, right now, price caps, revenue caps may have a positive immediate impact. For example, on wholesale pricing. But I was just wondering whether this is a good opportunity also for the Commission and all the policymakers to take a step back and think whether indeed the methodology of how the wholesale prices are set is the correct one, and whether the whole exercise ongoing now with energy exchanges is the right way to set prices in the energy sector. Stop here.
Thank you very much, Anastasios, for these additional questions and food for thought. Before getting started, let me just make a couple of housekeeping announcements. So each speaker will start with some introductory remarks, and after all the introductions, we'll then open the floor for questions, both from participants here in the room and for those joining us online. If you're here, raise your hand, simple enough. If you're online, you can also raise your virtual hand with the opposite Zoom button, which everybody knows well, I hope, by now. At that point, you will be unmuted by my colleagues who are controlling the Zoom operations, and then you will be able to ask your question and introduce yourself. If you cannot unmute yourself, then you can also send us your question via the chat on Zoom, and I will read it out. Let me remind you that while the introductory remarks by speakers are on the record and they will be recorded and shared on social media, then the Q&A discussion is going to be held under Chatham House rules. So you can report what's said, but not who said it. Now, this being said, I'm happy to then get started on the discussion. I will first give the floor to András Hujber, followed by Maria Rita, and then followed by Øyvind. So let's get started. András, you have the floor.
Great, thanks. So I thought I was going to spend a couple of words about the Repower framework, because this is the kind of document that has been framing the EU actions, the Commission's actions. And this will be the document that I think will stay with us for a while and guiding us in what it is, the efforts to diversify away from Russian gas supply. So the plan is basically nothing else but a layout of what we would need to do to be able to come off from Russian gas in the short term, in the medium, and in the long term, while keeping in mind our wider decarbonization ambitions, which the Commission and the EU, I think, intends to keep no matter what. And sometimes it appears that this plan was laid out ages ago. We've been working on this for quite a while. Actually, it's only 4 months old, and a lot has happened in between. By Russia reducing or stopping supplies to a number of member states have created basic effects on the ground, and with that it made the plan nothing else but document that has no other chance but to succeed. So this will be happening with or without us, given what Russia has been doing and maybe what it will do in the future. So perhaps because the time is limited, so perhaps just to flag a few short-term arrangements and proposals the Commission has put out to see how we can cope with the plan in the immediate future. So you will remember that In the spring, the Commission proposed a plan and rules to fill up EU gas storages to prepare for the next coming winter. The plan will be 90% of storages will need to be filled before the heating season. For this period, it's 80% rules. I think the last couple of days, I looked at the numbers, it's about 84, 85% of the storage train. So we have overachieved this target, which is, I think, is an important first thing to note. And this gives some degree of confidence as to how we're going to navigate through the winter. You might remember that mid-July, was it, when the Commission proposed binding saving targets for EU member states. I think it was 15%, vis-a-vis 5-year average consumption of member states. And the Commission proposed for member states to save, so that we ease the pressure on the markets, so that we give confidence to the markets that we're able to save when needed. This was adopted in a different form. It's not binding, but it's an aspirational type of target for member states. But I think if you look at some of the figures, we will see that in certain months, certain member states were able to way overachieve 15%, given the extreme price environment in which companies and users act. So in that sense, maybe a big parenthesis, I can say we are on track with that, at least in the short term. Then an important proposal or measure put forward was the setup of what we call the EU Energy Platform. This is comprising an ambition to set out terms for how the EU could jointly purchase gas going out of the market or on the market, and make use of the political and commercial weight of doing things together, and try to achieve better conditions on gas purchases together. That's kind of one thing which we are looking at how this can be done. We also want to work closer with member states to see what their needs are in terms of consumption and volumes that they would like to replace with other than Russian gas supplies. And we also want to take a closer look with them as to how better to operate the networks we have, so that actually gases from alternative sources can flow better to there where they are needed. Pipelines are there, but sometimes it's difficult to operate them in a way one like. And many more things will come. I think you might have listened to the Commission President's State of the Union speech, where she kind of flagged a few other measures. You talked about gas and electricity price caps. I think she talked about revenue caps for power companies. She talked about a contribution from other energy companies, oil, coal, and other type of kind of gas companies, to the extent they are still up and running, to contribute to ease the pain that customers now see with the very high prices. She talked about liquidity measures in terms of trading, supporting and facilitating companies who need to act on energy and derivative markets with the collateral requirements and providing some relief there. She talked about benchmarks, gas price benchmarks, on which then contracts are written, and the question whether we need to create a better frame and provide maybe alternative gas benchmarks next to the ones that we have available, to see that we can better cater for the needs of the markets and LNG operators. And lastly, again, something that you mentioned, state aid rules. I think there was a flag. The Commission is ready to adjust its application of state aid competition rules, in particular when it comes now to provision of guarantees that some very big companies might need to be able to continue to operate and draw gas. I think the plan is strong, is realistic, and will deliver what it needs to deliver, so that we can get off from Russian gas in the short, in particular in the mid long term, and still clearly well ahead of 2030, which has been the ambition. I think this will happen with or without us.
Thank you very much, András, for giving this perspective on the wide set of policies that have been put on the table in the past year. And as you said, I think today we have eyes focused on the short-term solutions, but we shouldn't forget about how to meet them, how to couple them with the climate targets also in medium and long term. Let me now give the floor to Maria Rita Galli. Maria Rita, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to participate to this discussion, this debate, which is very timely. So if I may try to give you a little bit of perspective from the crisis, which is living on the ground, how it is felt on the ground since, let's say, as the gas transmission system operator of Greece, we have been already facing a situation starting from the end of April when the Russian gas flows to Bulgaria have been suspended, where, let's say, we had all of a sudden to turn the way our system has been historically operated from a traditional importing country into a transit country. What I can say is that, let's say, the reaction of all the involved parties has been very good and very effective. And let's say this is, of course, thanks to great cooperation among the European Commission, the member state, the governments, the regulators. And in this way, we have been able in the shorter term to increase very significantly the export capability from Greece to Bulgaria. At the same time, and I resonate what András was saying about it's good that Europe is meeting its target for storage for this winter, looking at the short term. At the same time, of course, there are many differences around European countries in terms of the size of the storage and in terms of, let's say, diversification of sources. Greece has done quite a lot in terms of access now of new sources with the TAP and the expansion of Revitusa, and in a few days, the interconnection with IGB. But there are many phenomena that are not only gas driven that will influence how we will face the winter. Think about nuclear in France, think about a very low level of water in Italy. And so we have flows, phenomena of gas and electricity that also in the context of meeting the target of the 15% reduction in consumption for this winter will have to be considered. We are facing a situation in which our gas consumption is not going down in the power sector, has gone down a lot in the industrial, notwithstanding the pickup of coal and analyzing the drivers. The main one has been we are exporting a lot of electricity to Italy. And this is expected maybe to be even bigger during this coming winter. So let's say there are phenomena in the working of the European market that, of course, are not targets that can be set at the individual level of single member state. Otherwise, it would be very difficult and challenging to meet them. Coming to the mid-term and to REPowerEU, certainly REPowerEU can be a very strong instrument in order to, let's say, achieve the targets of reduction of reliance from Russian natural gas. In this corner of Europe, a lot is being done in terms of creating new access and more than tripling potentially the export capacity to Bulgaria. I think we need to be fast at all levels, because the timing of the decision-making process for the REPowerEU can be, let's say, an obstacle for achieving the targets of, let's say, reducing the dependence of Russian gas flows, because investment are needed now. They need to be starting on the ground, and we need a clear energy policy visibility, because we have, as a infrastructure investor, we are receiving sometimes also contradictory messages. Investment are needed now. They need to be completed very soon, but at the same time, REPowerEU envisages a significant reduction of gas demand, and at the same time, coal-fired power plants are temporarily, but we never know how long is a temporary thing, up and running. So I think that really the short-term response has been, I think, exceptional. We will have to face a difficult winter. The mid-term need to have the same sense of urgency and speed. Otherwise, we will really struggle to meet our targets of diversification.
Thank you very much, Margherita, also for highlighting the interconnection, I think, between the gas and electricity sector, as well as one additional layer of tensions when it comes to investment and then the urgency around that and the bottlenecks to that. Last but not least, let me turn to Øyvind.
Thank you, Elisabetta, and thanks for the invite to say some words here. And please excuse my voice. I will have it fixed in a couple of weeks. I hope you can all hear me. It's not because of smoking or heavy drinking.
Singing, maybe.
Yeah, singing, indeed. I just started a new career, which is not going so well. You mentioned, Elisabetta, that we are a Danish energy company. That's correct. It's called DON Energy, which was short for Danish Oil and Natural Gas. And that name was reflecting our main business at the time. Now we're called Ørsted, and our vision is that we're turn entirely on green energy. We have more than 1,000 offshore wind turbines spinning, and our target for 2030 is 50 gigawatts of capacity in renewables globally. We are headquartered in Denmark, but most of our activity is actually outside of Denmark. We are present in Europe, mainly in UK, Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, but also other emerging offshore countries. We're also looking now onshore. We're also in the US and in Asia. So that was just very short about Ørsted. I only want to give you 4 messages here. And the first one is pretty, I guess, obvious. It is that we need to save energy. I think the principle of energy efficiency first has never been more relevant than right now. It takes time to get new supply online, but if you save energy, you often save it quite immediately. So it used to be a big barrier, but the economics of energy efficiency was not always easy to translate to the house owner who might have some old stuff in their loft or in the attic that needs to be emptied before you can insulate the roof. I think today the price signals should be quite clear, and I hope we can kind of lift what other barriers there might be that is holding back energy efficiency investments. Secondly, we think that companies with large windfall profits, they need to contribute financially. I think, however, that's much easier said than done. There is a lot of complexity in hedges and long-term contracts that is not so easy to explain, and you can easily go wrong with setting price caps that might actually put security supply at danger because you have marginal costs that might be higher in some instances, and you might also risk taxing profits that actually doesn't exist. And of course, if that is then burdening companies that is supposed to do the very investments into green energy that will get us out of this crisis, it is not very helpful. My third point is that we need to move from plans and ambition to real concrete projects. If we look at the offshore wind sector, we as an industry, we are very ready to construct and build more than what we're doing today. We're just missing sea area that is being opened up for us to construct and develop. A telling example of this is maybe that the last tender in Denmark, the Thor tender, it actually had 4 different competitors all willing to pay a quite sizable amount to build the 1 gigawatt Thor project. So that gives you a feeling of how the industry is ready to deliver, but there is a lack of sites to get this going. My 4th and last point I want to make is that, and that connects to your point, Anastasios, about how the pricing is happening, how the market design is set up. I think at least for me privately, there's a saying that is, you never know what you have or you lose it. And I sense that this is quite a relevant thing in this context. It's easy to throw out innovative new ideas, but we should not forget that the current market design is something that we've been refining and developing over the last 30 years, I guess. And there's a lot of wisdom and good solutions embedded into it, which we must be careful to not throw out with the bath water. That's not to say that changes should not happen. I think there's always room for improvements and reform. But I think it's fundamental to keep in mind how important and how much value Europe is getting from this integrated energy market that we're having. So let's focus on solutions and how we can make it better. We think there might be solutions to be found in more long-term contracting, which will enable more average pricing to consumers. But when you ask Anastasios, is the kind of the way pricing is happening, is that right? When I look at other suggestions on the table, I don't see convincing other alternatives. So those were my 4 points. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Øyvind. Yeah, I think we can certainly also build up on these 4 points, and I think it's particularly interesting that you also mentioned energy efficiency as well as the risk of undoing some of the benefits that market design in the electricity sector has delivered so far in Europe.